Hi there, it's March the 4th, and we're continuing our progress through the Good News of Mark, and we're reading from chapter 11:27 through to chapter 12 and verse 17. In the last part of chapter 11, the religious leaders come to Jesus to again try and exert their authority over him, and in fact they ask him by what authority he is doing the things he's doing and saying the things he's saying. But Jesus answers the question with a question. And he asked them a question about the immersion of John, about the baptism of John, what John was doing. And he asks them, the baptism of John, was this from heaven or was it from men? Now this sends them into a quandary, because the baptism of John, the preaching of John the Baptist, was extremely popular with the people in the area, and he'd already been made something of a holy one, a saint. And so they realized that if they say that it was from heaven, then Jesus will say to them, well, why didn't you accept it? And if they say it's from men, then they risk raising the ire of the crowds and of the people who may be listening to them. And so they just take the Fifth Amendment and they say, we don't know, we can't tell you. And Jesus comes back to them and said, well, in that case, if you can't tell me the answer to a simple question like that, I'm not going to answer your question either. Jesus then launches into a parable at the beginning of chapter 12, in Hebrew a mashal, a life saying, an illustrative story that he's telling, except this story is very pointed. It's the story of a vineyard owner who lets the vineyard out to tenant farmers and then sends messengers to receive the fruit of the vineyard, but the tenant farmers kill the messengers until finally the vineyard owner sends his own son, and the tenant farmers say, we kill him, we will ruin the inheritance and therefore we'll gain the inheritance. And then when the actual vineyard owner takes away the vineyard, so from the tenant farmers, and gives them to someone else. And the religious leaders, the scribes and so on, are very upset, because they know that Jesus is pointing this parable, this mashal, at them. And Jesus actually ends off this parable with a quote from Psalm 118, which was very well known. We've already had Psalm 118 quoted from in the shouts of the crowds as Jesus enters Jerusalem. And now Jesus takes another quotation from Psalm 118 when he said, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and this is the Lord's doing and is wonderful in our eyes. And so Jesus is applying to himself this really well-known quotation, this quotation from the great Hallel, from the praise that was used in Israel very often on the festal occasions. And so this makes the authorities even more determined to try and get rid of Jesus. It's clear from this story that Jesus is very much in authority. Authority is a real key for these days, when so many people are claiming so many things, when so many people are teaching so many things. That question, by what authority do you do this, is one that we can often ask and often don't have much of a response to. But we can know that with Jesus we have the authority of God. He works and he operates in the authority of his Father, an authority that is not imposed, an authority that is not an overlordship, but an authority that comes out of the reality of who he is, out of his presence. He is what he teaches, and this is what draws us to this amazing authority which is in Jesus himself. Have a very good March the 4th.